December 13th, 2021 to order. First order of business is approval of minutes from the November 22nd, 2021 meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Poehler, second by Mr. King. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Any special requests or continuances?
There is a item that's been withdrawn. That's 2021-028. That was the use variance that goes with 2021-027.
Okay, and that's for the provide animal care services. That has been withdrawn. Okay. Findings of fact, BZA 2021-025 for Jason M. Grable at 407 US 31 North.
Chairman, in consideration of statutory criteria, I move that we adopt the written findings of fact as presented, incorporating the evidence submitted into the record as our final decision and final action for variance petition number BZA 2021-025.
Motion by Mrs. Peters,
Second.
second by Mr. Foster. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. No old business. Any old business from the floor? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. First up is BZA 2021-026, development standards variance. Eric Prime for Greendale 14 LLC, requesting two variances. One is requesting an increase in the total allowable signage square foot area, and the second one is a variance requesting the use of a tension frame wall sign that is considered a banner, which is prohibited. Mr. Prime?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I guess first, anyone who's wishing to present for or against this, if you would stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn by our secretary.
Do you swear that these perjury, testimony about the truth, and best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Prime's name and address for the record, please.
Eric Prime, Van Vader Law Firm, 225 South Emerson, Greenwood, Indiana, on behalf of your petitioner, which is actually Reese Nichols. We are here this evening for a couple of sign issues. So, there we go. You may recall we were here almost a year ago, January 2021, requesting some exterior finish material variances with regard to the amount of masonry that would have been required. That variance was granted, and I'm not sure if you've been by lately. This is just the area overview. It's the facility at Tri Road in 31, but this was the rendering that we showed you back in January. Look and see where the signs are, and the wall sign that we're here about this evening is down to the left. It's the lower one that has the graphic designs on it. That was all there in January. That's what we anticipated doing with this facility. And if you look at the current facility, I just took these pictures today. Pretty amazing. It pretty much jumped off the rendering and looks exactly like what they did or what they intended, except for one issue, and you can see in the lower left side of the picture there, there's a hole. That is where, if we go back very quickly to the January 2021 rendering, that's where we anticipated that this other sign would go. And then once we got to kind of the final completion stage, everything else is fine and went according to plan, except we're missing the one sign. And actually, you can see the downlighting is actually already in place to illuminate that sign where it was intended to go. So what we've run into is a situation where our north store was a little ahead of the curve in terms of renovations, and it actually got finished sooner. The idea was, from a marketing and branding standpoint, to make those identical. And so very quickly, that is what the north store currently looks like. That's actually a picture of the north store. That's the signage that is in place up there, and there's a little bit more of a back view, so you can see it's basically the same facade. So our intention, obviously, was to have the north store and the south store match. What we ran into was in Marion County, they also prohibit banner signs, but they have a tweak to their definition that says if all four corners are attached to a wall, then it's no longer considered a banner, it's considered a wall sign. We anticipated that there would be something similar down here. Unfortunately, there is not. So staff's position that this should be, or it should be considered a banner under your UDO, we're gonna have a hard time arguing with that. But it's our position that this wasn't the type of thing that was intended to be prohibited when they prohibited banners, right? When you say banner, you're thinking of a vinyl sign with printing on it that's attached by grommets and has, you know, wire or string or something attaching it to a building and it kind of flaps in the wind, is out there. You know, that's a banner, at least that's what I think of with a banner. This is a high tension frame attached to the wall at all four corners that is just a very high resolution graphic. And yes, it can be changed out, and the one on the North Store does change periodically. They do it seasonally. Here is a today picture of the North Store. So that's what's up there now. So it's just a way, it's almost, you know, an art piece in a way. It just allows them to give a little bit more life to the exterior of the building. And so in order to do this, we need both a square footage variance and now, based on staff's interpretation of this being a banner, we need a variance from the prohibition against banners. So that's what we're here about this evening. I think the important thing to look at is exactly how solid this sign is. This graphic shows you the type of materials and the type of hardware that goes into this thing. These don't blow in the wind. They don't move around. They are permanent there. The only thing that's not permanent is the ability to take that graphic off and put a new sign up there, a new type of graphic, which, you know, like for instance, last summer they had sand with rings sitting in it that said beach rocks, right? Ha, ha, ha. But I mean, it's that type of seasonal change out that they do, but it's done in a tasteful way. It's not anything that's tacky. It's not a detriment or an eyesore in any way. In fact, as you recall, back when we were here in January, it was there. We intended to do this. We showed everybody that it wasn't hiding the ball or, hey, we came up with this great new idea that we need to try to, you know, shoehorn in here. It was in the plans all along. So what we're looking at this evening is, you know, the statutory criteria, but I have to go through them. They are the same for both the dimensional, the square footage variance, as well as the banner, or whether or not it's a banner, but the banner. And so those criteria are that the approval will not be injurious to public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. I think that's a simple one here. Putting a sign up doesn't hurt anybody's health or safety or morals. There won't be anything risque on this banner. There's nothing ever going to be portrayed on here that's tacky or off-putting, because why would we, right? It's our store. We have the absolute interest in maintaining, and Rich Nichols has a good name, right? I mean, they're well thought of. They are a good corporate citizen in Greenwood. They've been here a long time, and they're not going to do anything that would be detrimental to their own store, let alone something detrimental to the health and welfare of others. So the second criteria is that the use of value of the adjacent real estate will not be impacted. I think that one's pretty obvious as well. In fact, the facelift on this building, I've heard nothing but good things. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have said, hey, man, you know, love what they did to Reese Nichols. It looks great. It kind of refreshes that whole area. It doesn't all look the same now. And so if anything, I think these renovations increase area property values. They certainly weren't detrimental. And the final is that the strict application of the zoning ordinance would result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. Well, there are a couple here. One is, as I already stated, we have the North Store in place. It's up and running, it's rolling. And for us, as a company, to have that unified branding and unified marketing ability is really essential. It was what was planned all along when they did both of these simultaneously in terms of planning renovations. And so it is a practical difficulty if we're not able to match what the North Store looks like. And secondly, it's staff's position, if you read the staff report, was that we have some options here, that we have the ability to put in window signs, or we have the ability to ask for temporary signage permits. Two problems there. One, the window signs are not what we're going for, right? They can be tacky. If you're in the store, they diffuse the light or block the light. We're a jewelry merchant, right? We want as much natural light coming in that store as we can to glisten off the jewelry, right? That's part of the buying experience, part of just having that ability in there. So really, window signs are not an option for us. And then the temporary signs, it's a maximum of 6 per year at 15 days each. So even if we max that out, each one requires a new permit, each one requires a new payment. We're talking about less than a third of the year, and the rest of the year, that area there would be the vacant pole on the side of the building, right? So that's really not what we're going for, and we don't want that look. I mean, look at that right now. It's not what we intended. It's not what is really going to look the best for that area, if that's prohibited. So again, we think there are practical difficulties, and so we believe we've hit all 3 of the criteria. We are willing, certainly, to we are amenable to limiting the number of change outs. You know, if that's something that the BZA would be interested in, we're willing to work with how often these change and even what the content may be. It's certainly essential for us to be able to complete this. And the store is 99% done. It's ready. They had their grand opening. It's just, there's a real obvious gap here that's missing that we would like to fill in.
Anything else, Mr. Price?
Nothing, happy to answer any questions. And Jennifer Emery from Reese Nichols is here with me this evening. Sorry, I forgot to introduce her. That was 4 on my part. She's available to answer questions as well.
Okay. I believe Mr. Davis would like
Yes, I'd like to speak about this. And to Eric's point, he brought up our definition of a banner sign, and any sign of lightweight fabric or similar material that is permanently mounted to a pole or a building by a permanent frame or by a permanent frame at 1 or more ends. National flags, state municipal flags, or the official flag of any institution or business shall not be considered banners. So by our definition, this is not a rigid material from a panel. It is the canvas or cloth or whatever synthetic material this is printed on. It is a lightweight material stretched over a frame. It meets our definition. To give some background on this, yes, our sign code can be limited with the amount of square footage. This building is in a fortunate position already because it's on a corner. It already gets double the exposure that other buildings would because it's on the end. As mentioned, yes, there are other temporary options. You can have window signage. If you look at street view of this building, there was window signage in it when the street view car went by. I know that was a few years ago, but marketing strategies can change, but it is an option. As you'll note in the staff report, one of our conditions, should the board decide to go in this direction, is to prohibit the temporary signage, because this would be, in effect, a permanent temporary sign, as it would be changing. I say regularly, but it's not like a weekly thing. It's just, it will be changing. To that end, the other problem with allowing a banner type material is the enforcement aspect. From a code enforcement perspective, banners on buildings are something that takes some regular enforcement from us. So to what end can this not look like it's canvas? To what end? Well, because that's when everybody tells on each other too. Well, I put this up because Texas Roadhouse had one. I put this up because, you know, insert business name had one. That's like, well, they had to take theirs down too. So to what end, you know, do we not encourage something that we shouldn't? So that is why staff was unfavorable towards the petition.
If I may, just a couple quick things. I did not mention, and I had intended to, that the 2 conditions that staff recommended, if you do approve, we are perfectly happy with both of those, that the sign will be in substantial compliance with the exhibits that we've submitted, and that we will not have any window signs or see any temporary signage permits. And I guess from the standpoint of whether this sets some kind of precedent, it really doesn't. The way the BZA works. You guys have to consider everything on a case-by-case basis. It really depends on what's being sought, whether or not it meets the statutory criteria. If it doesn't, then it's deniable, even if you approve something else that didn't meet those statutory criteria.
Mr. Davis, any final comments?
So if, as on the rendering, now granted, in a rendering, there's no way that staff could know that this is a printed graphic stretched on a frame that meets our definition of banner. There's absolutely no way we could know that, even if it was presented on the materials. The building elevations that were submitted for plan review, not necessarily the BZA items.
Oh,
So,
yep. Rendering back up.
so we can, we can pull files, we can talk about that all day. I don't think that's in the board's best interest of time. Now, if this is to be represented as art for the business, can we somehow prohibit this from, and I don't know to what extent we can say this because we must be content neutral, but to not having additional, say, Reese Nichols, this be an additional panel for just the Reese Nichols logo? Can it always be used for some purpose? I guess that would be the additional condition I would offer.
Us says yes.
Yes, we've never put Reese Nichols on there as well. It's always been either another designer that we carry or just an image. It never repeats Reese Nichols.
Okay. Anything else?
No, other than, I mean, it is a large expansion of the level of signage area on that side, but to that, I defer to you.
All right. That'll close the
Nope. Go through the statements.
hearing.
He didn't. He just didn't read it to him.
Oh,
Yeah, he just
he
took it on his
doesn't,
own.
okay, I thought we missed them.
No, I'll close the public hearing. I guess I have a couple questions from the start. So is artwork considered a sign? And how would that apply if they wanted to put a piece of artwork up there?
So now you get into the gray area of the sign code. If it was just art, no, it wouldn't necessarily be a sign. We would, however, the material that we're discussing would still be an issue.
Okay.
But if it was just art, then no, that's not necessarily commercial content. That doesn't necessarily, like this, let's celebrate. That's a good example, Mr. Brown is showing. There's not really commercial content
So it would be allowable.
if it weren't for the material.
Weren't for the material.
Although we
I
get-
think a little bit of that, again, it's a gray area,
Yes.
but if
that's
that
not-
artwork is a diamond ring,
Mhm.
that's advertising product that they sell. To me, that would be not art, but
So
that's where you get in some of the gray area,
Sure.
of what kind of art we're talking
that's a
about.
good point from Ed that, when do we cross the line? Is it one ring? Is it one watch?
Right.
Is it a picture full of rings?
I appreciate that. So, Mr. Prime, is that what would be here, or did I see one of the screenshots where there was basically a frame all the way around it? Or did I imagine that?
That's what you're gonna see. I don't think there's not like a frame edge,
Like a picture frame.
like that. They won't have
Right,
the wood rim around it.
but so there is not
The
a.
frame's all behind. It attaches.
It's all behind.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a high tension
Yep.
metal frame that holds it all over. It's behind there.
I see it now. Okay. All right. I see some evidence of the practical difficulties given what was expected, and now you have this blank wall there, which to me is not necessarily what was intended. And I do agree that it's a better look than temporary signage and window signage. But I understand staff stance here. So I think if we went down on the size from the 260 down to the 200 that is allowed, it would really make it look out of place on that space. Is that what would happen?
That's the concern.
First of all, the sign based on the drawings is only 8 by 18. That's only 144 square feet.
Right, it is. It just puts us, the 200 is all.
It's collective.
Is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
the,
that,
so the sign, the graphic itself is only 144 square feet.
But when you add in the other signs, it's in the
Right.
260.
that's where we hit the 200. So it's not like it's all one giant sign.
Right.
It's 200 square feet and we're asking for more. It's 3 signs. It's the Reese Nichols sign, Rolex sign, and then that sign.
It certainly doesn't look gaudy or out of place. So I think that's all the questions I have. Ms. Peters?
I guess I'm hearing the city's concerns with the materials. Have you looked into other temporary materials? I just was at a show over the weekend and they have this method of being able to take all that stuff and put it on aluminum and attach the aluminum to the wall. That would not be a temporary flexible banner, so to speak. But I mean, is there some thought that maybe they could use some other material?
I don't know if they've looked into it, although that may be a weight issue. The aluminum.
Oh, it was so lightweight, it was unbelievable. I think it's,
Graphic.
I think it was so much less weight than a canvas.
I will just say the only reason we're here about this particular one today is that they've already had enough time with the North Store that they've been very happy with the quality. They haven't had any issues with fading, sun bleaching or any of that. So it's been, they have that vendor in place who's been doing the North Store, and that same vendor would do the South Store as well.
And my impression from the city is that they're looking at is, wind damage with tearing and it ripping off and going all over the place kind of a thing. And then that's what I'm understanding from the weakness of the materials. And that's why I didn't know if there's something else that's been considered that would not be a problem.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They haven't had any issues with this. The company that makes this guarantees that they'll come out. If it does rip for some reason, they'll come right out and fix it. It's not gonna sit there and look.
Well, I'm more concerned, going down the street and running in somebody's windshield of the car.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, no, no.
you
This
know,
is-
see
This is
what I'm
affixed to
saying?
the wall, so yeah, and in fact, if it did come off, it'd be less dangerous as a material than an aluminum piece would be, so.
So I do actually have a question. How often are they changing the signs on the North Store?
Every couple months,
So like every couple months, okay, so it's not a monthly thing or even a weekly, it's every
No.
couple months.
so probably 6 times a year, 7 or 8 times a year max. And that's what I said, we're amenable to, if that's an issue for this board, we are happy to commit to some limiting number.
What is the material on that? Did we discuss that? Is it just vinyl? Or is it some particular type of vinyl?
Graphics digitally printed and UV treated. Does it say? These are the specs that I have. I don't know, Dale, did you get?
For the sake of discussion, I guess I would call it a coated canvas.
Okay.
So it's,
To bind.
yeah, from what I know of the material, it's very similar to what you would expect out of one of the more substantial banners, but it's on this frame Mr. Ryan was describing.
So it's a very thick canvas style vinyl. It's not, like you said, Mr. Prime, it's not the kind that you see with the grommets that are flapping around and just straight vinyl.
Right. And Jen, you want to let them know, I mean, she's at the store on the north side and knows that, she's been out there on many days and described.
The North Store, that renovation was completed in 2018, and there's always been a sign up there. We've never even had to call for a repair issue, anything coming loose. I mean, that has never happened.
Mr. Fuller?
my guess is it's, if something were to happen to it, I mean, it's a printed vinyl, right? I mean, it's probably something you go and get within a couple days, I'm thinking. Just knowing how, some of those signs are. My guess is you do it seasonally, like Christmas, Valentine's Day, summer is always weddings, things of that nature. I guess I don't have any questions. I don't see an issue.
Mr. Foster?
More of a content question. Is it always kind of advertising more like artistic style and not this week on end only 50% off or buy whatever for this price or
They can do that. I mean, they can put whatever message they want up there. Yet again, if there's some content related commitment that you would like us to make, we're happy to do that. If you
and again, I would expect that brand not to have that type of thing, but I was just like from the North Store, is it always been more of a seasonal kind of like what you've shown in the examples?
90% of the time, yes. But I'm not going to say they've never put up a this week, 50% off sale or something if it was a big deal.
But typically, if it was something like that, it would be more event related, like, watch event this weekend, and it's, up and down just because of that special event.
Okay.
But the designs have always been very tasteful, and we're a high-end jeweler. The last thing we
Yeah,
want to do
that
is.
was kind of my thought, but if you don't ask, you don't know what it is.
Exactly.
I have no other questions.
Mr. King?
I think all mine I had, we've kind of, it's kind of nice being on the end. I get to kind of sit here and absorb.
I would definitely be in favor of a limitation, whether that's 6 per year or every, no more than, must be up for at least 2 months or 8 weeks or whatever that is. I don't know how you define what can and cannot be
Well, I
on the signage without getting into very,
think
And do we need to go?
limit it to a number, but not limit it to a number.
to a time.
To a time.
So limit to
There might be
6
ones that they
or
want to
8
leave.
or whatever it is a year.
But,
Yeah, because like a summer one, you might put up race weekend.
Right, right.
Labor Day.
so,
Okay.
that being said,
And that's a very good point, because they actually do tie in the tag warrior.
Oh, yeah.
Do an 85 watch every year, so I'm certain that would be one of the things that's out there.
I think I had a question, Dale, I forgot. Would this type of variance run with the property or the business only, or we have put a restriction that it can only run with this business if they ever move locations or sell, would it?
The way it's worded right now would run with the property, but you could certainly have that limitation that it runs with the current tenant.
Any other questions? We'll close.
what third condition you had wanted to
Number.
ask?
Number of times, the
Acknowledged.
content may be changed.
Okay, are all the notices, receipts, affidavits, everything in order?
Yes, they are. Copies are in the file.
And a certified copy of the Unified Development Ordinance and the comprehensive plan are also in the file.
And I will take a motion to accept all the evidence into the record.
First one, right?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we admit all the evidence presented in regard to this matter, including the notices, receipts, maps, photographs, written documents, petitioner's application and attachments, petitioner's detailed statement of reasons, the staff report prepared by the planning department, certified copies of the Unified Development Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan, testimony of the petitioner, city planning staff, and any remonstrators, and all other exhibits presented, be they oral or written, for consideration by this board in regard to this petition, and to include the testimony of those present this evening.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Fuller, second by Mrs. Peters. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. I'll take a motion on the ballot itself for request number 1, which is to increase the maximum sign face area from 200 square feet to approximately 260 square feet.
Chairman, I recommend that we approve that request with conditions as indicated in staff report plus, which are, number one, the sign shall be in substantial compliance with the exhibits submitted. Number two, the property shall not have window signage or temporary signage, as the sign will fulfill that need. Number three, the number of times the content can be changed, limited to 6 per calendar year. And approval of this waiver to run with the tenant.
Second,
Have a
I think that's what you're.
Yep. I have a motion by Mrs. Peters with the 4 conditions as stated, and a second by Mr. Polar to approve. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. On the second request, use a banner or banner-like material for the wall sign. Banners are prohibited under section 10308, sign C, prohibited signs, 19 banners.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve this request with the same 4 conditions as stated in item number 1, or request number 1.
Motion by Mr. Fuller,
Second.
second by Mrs. Peters. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Take a motion to draft written findings of fact.
Mr. Chairman, in consideration of the statutory criteria, I move that we adopt the written findings of fact.
Direct to
Preparation
corporations
of the
council.
findings of fact.
Move on to both. Yeah, yeah.
Having considered the statutory criteria, I move that we direct the Corporations Council office to draft written findings of fact regarding our decision on the variance request presented in variance petition number BZA 2021-026. I got that right. Said findings to specifically incorporate the staff report and the evidence submitted in the record for consideration and adoption by the Board of Zoning Appeals as our final decision and final action regarding this petition at our next meeting.
Motion by Mr. Fuller,
Second.
second by Mr. King. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Great. You are welcome to proceed. We'll take final action in January.
Thank you. I'd like to.
Next up is BZA 2021-027, development standard variance for Scott A. and Christina R. Roeder at 1295 West Simmons Crossing Road. Is anyone here to speak to that petition?
I saw someone.
Yes, we're on Zoom.
Are you online?
Yes, we are. Can you see us?
Pretty good.
Oh, I think you're on mute.
Unmute.
I am here. Can you hear me?
We're unable to hear. I don't know if that's
I certainly can
IT.
hear your
can
proceedings.
help here.
Can you hear me?
We can now.
Okay, this is Chris Rader.
Oh, hi. Okay. Hello. Ms. Rader, tell us why you're here. Well, actually, before that, I need to have you sworn in by our secretary. So can you raise your right hand so we can see and be sworn in?
Do you swear no penalties for perjury, testimony about the truth, to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Okay. Now tell us why you're here.
We are here because we would like a request for variances on a building that we would like to build and on our property. This building is so that I can practice and train with my dogs for dog sport competitions. And we are asking for basically a variance in the size. It's larger than what is permitted by the Greenwood rules. And we also would like a change in the materials that would be used for construction and for the material that would be used for the distance between our drive and to the building. We'd like to use gravel instead of pavement. So This is not for commercial use. It is entirely for me to work with my dogs basically out of the elements, and to have a good surface for them to train on, and to be of a size that is of use for the sports which I train in. It would not be used for any competition. It's not large enough to do such a thing. So, you know, it is large enough for me to train, but it is not such that we could do trials or competitions, or for that matter, I wouldn't even be using it for commercial use. This is purely for my personal needs, working with my dogs.
Okay. Do you have your statutory criteria answers in front of you?
I do not. I am actually outside the place where I train, where I train. So my husband has that, and I'm hoping he has found out how to speak.
Can you hear me? Do you hear me
Yeah.
now?
Yes,
All
we
right.
can hear you now.
All right.
Yeah, Mr. Rader, I do need to get you sworn in as
He did
well.
say I
He
did.
I
did.
heard two
He did,
people.
Yeah,
okay.
he did say I did.
Okay, then we're good. Sorry, I apologize. I missed that. So, Mr. Rader, you do have your responses to the statutory criteria?
Yes, we do.
Okay, then they differ for each, do they not? Yes, so let's go through request number 1, which is the relief from the requirement that it have 36-inch tall mortared masonry wainscot. So number 1, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because?
The variance request to deviate from the mortared masonry wainscot with the same materials used on the primary structure is appropriate for painted steel siding, wainscot, and roofing. This being a post and frame accessory building rather than a more substantial residential type structure. We would be happy to have a wainscot that, you know, harmonizes with the home, but basically it would be a steel sided accessory building.
Okay. Number 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property, including the variance, will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because?
The requested variance for color coordinated painted steel does not conflict with buildings in the area. We basically have neighbors who have accessory buildings that range from galvanized sheds to wooden barns. And so while ours would have a wainscot, which would more harmonize with our house, we don't feel that there's any problem with that.
Okay, and number 3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because?
Not using the standard material of painted steel would inflate the building cost prohibitively to the point where we would not build a building if we had to comply with the building ordinance.
Okay. And number 4, the structure is not regulated under Indiana Code 8-21-10-3 for hazard air navigation. Okay, let's move on to request number 2, which is the increase of the maximum size limitation. Well, maximum 150% of square footage, and you are asking for 4,800 square foot, which is 1,943 square feet above the maximum. So number 1, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community because?
The building will be located in the middle portion of our property and set back from the street over 300 feet, and for the most part hidden from street view.
Okay. Number 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because?
This nice looking and functional building would actually add value to my property and to the properties adjacent to me.
Okay. And number 3, the strict application of terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because?
The increased floor size required for the dog sports my wife practices on Basically, a sort of a minimum size for that would have to be 50 by 70. Anything smaller than that, it really constricts the practical use of the building.
And number 4, the structure is not regulated under Indiana Code 8-21-10-3 for hazard air navigation. All right, request number 3 was to have relief from the requirement that all the driveways and parking areas be covered or be paved with concrete, asphalt, or pavers. You are requesting a crushed stone. So number 1, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community because
the driveway itself will have little daily use. The driveway of our home is a 170-foot asphalt driveway which connects to the street, and this would not even begin until the end of that, going back the additional 120 feet or so to the building.
And number 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property, including the variance, will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because
the adjacent properties also have crushed stone driveways in the rear of their properties. My area was annexed into Greenwood in 2010 and was quite frankly a very rural area up until that time.
Okay. Number 3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because
the cost of asphalt pavement to extending my driveway back to that parking pad would be several thousands of dollars that I can't justify for the small amount of use that it will receive. A firm driveway is required for the contractor to build the building, but we generally won't be driving any actual vehicles back to it once it's built.
Okay. Anything else either of you would like to add?
I'd just like to say that we'd like to get our building built, and we would certainly stick with the recommendations of the city if we get it approved, in that it will be only for residential accessory purposes. There's no business or commercial intent with this, and that it would basically conform with the plan that we've already submitted, and that the materials would harmonize with our home and surrounding buildings.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
First, we did get a letter submitted from the Cobblestone through their HOA. So I believe you've all received a copy of that.
We have.
So for the record, just wanted to let you know that you have that. They did have some concerns about this, but the HOA president was not able to join us this evening, so provided that written statement. Now, as far as staff's recommendation against this, in October, we went through the first update of our zoning ordinance. And one of the major rewrites of that was how we address accessory structures. Because so many accessory structures end up in this board. One thing we added was upper limits on square footage based on the primary structure size. The intent was to define a line at which what becomes the primary use. If you have a 800 square foot home and an 8,000 square foot accessory building, is it really an accessory building at that point? So that is why upper limits were added, because we were starting to see more and more variances for the pole barn structures, and the pole barn structures were getting larger and larger. So we added that requirement, that 150% to the ordinance. Now that would still provide for a little over 2,800 square foot of a structure. The neighboring structures on this property to the east and west, one's about 2,100, the other is about 2,000 square feet. So there are some good sized pole barns out there. They could certainly have one larger, and that's even just within our code. But at 4,800, it's well over double the size of what's out there, which that's quite a large structure. The petitioner did mention a minimum of 50 by 70, just for reference, that's 3,500 square feet. So that's closer to the 2857, but still definitely in excess of it. And there was some discussion about how you can and can't see it. This home's driveway is directly aligned with cobblestone symmetry, so you can see right down the driveway to where this structure is going to be. So while it may be set back, it's going to be visible. Now, on the sake of gravel is not permitted anywhere in the city. We have areas where, we did take them in from the county, or they were built, in the 50s or 60s, and they've had gravel ever since. Now that gravel can't be expanded, they can just maintain it. That is one of the reasons that the city does not permit gravel, is the maintenance. It's a fairly easy item to just not get maintained. It is not good for water quality. It has sedimentation with it because the crushed stone can just run off. And it is a frequent zoning violation, so it's not something we want to see perpetuated or increased. Now, the architecture standards, a lot of it, gets mentioned too. Well, this is an aesthetic thing. It's not necessarily entirely aesthetic. Yes, it does have aesthetic value to it, but it's also durability, maintenance, longevity. Adding a masonry base to these structures just will make them last a lot longer. Even when you think about a home that has vinyl siding, that bottom of the foundation is still exposed. I mean, there's still some durable surface down there at ground level. Granted, it might not be the 36-inch wainscot we're talking about, but there is masonry there. So the architecture component is not strictly aesthetic. As noted, the commercial aspect of it was withdrawn, but as a note from our building department, if it was used for any outside uses, it does require a state CDR and plan review, which would mean that parking area does need paved, there need to be accessible routes. So if this did ever constitute a commercial use, there'd be a lot more work to be done on that. One last item I need to highlight, this zone, and it wasn't requested, but this zone has a height limitation on accessory structures of 20 feet. At 60 feet wide, and it looks like a 14-foot clear span in there. I don't know if the roof pitch is shallow enough to make 20 feet work, but I think that is something that needs to be considered as part of this this request as the overall building. That is it for staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Rader, you want to, can you respond? You have 5 minutes to respond, particularly interested in the height question and what the height is planned to be for this building.
Sure. As far as the height goes, the plans we gave may have had a 14-foot clear span building, but we could build a 12-foot clear span building with a 312 pitch. That would allow us to stay under the 20-foot height requirement. 14 would definitely be above that. It comes out to about 21 and a half. So, but if we took 2 feet off and only made it 12-foot clear span, it would be 19 and a half. And I don't have any problem doing that. As far as the gravel goes, if that was a decider one way or the other, we would get asphalt because but we're not going to have a lot of traffic to it after the building is built. It really is foot traffic with my wife and her dogs.
Okay. Anything additional?
Chris, do you have anything to say?
No, just to support that we have zero intent of commercial or other non-residential use. So that just, it is not on the table for us. So there shouldn't, we don't have any trouble signing that that's exactly what we intend is non-commercial, only residential uses.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Davis?
If there is no need for vehicle access beyond building it, would temporary gravel be an option with a sidewalk? Would be staff's only consideration for the board there.
I see, okay. Okay, I will close the public hearing. Open up to the board, Ms. Peters.
As you all mentioned in the presentation, the minimum requirement for meeting the needs of the training facility appears to be 3,500. Why would we need 4,800 square feet for a facility?
The difference in the 3,500 to the 48 is 10 feet on each side. 3,500 is 50 by 70. We're looking at a 60 by 80 building. We'd like to be able to store equipment out of the way. My wife has a lot of agility equipment and tri-ball balls that could need to be stored out of the area that's actually used for practice.
Okay, that's all I have.
Mr. Folder?
If the, kind of, with Mr. Davis, if there's not gonna be vehicular traffic going back to it, I would be in favor of a 4-foot pathway, whether it be blacktop or concrete, instead of a gravel drive.
More of a sidewalk.
More of a sidewalk, yes.
Mr. Foster?
I have no questions.
Mr. King?
So then that would, what Mr. Fuller's asking, that would be allowed, a concrete or like a.
That would be a
sidewalk.
condition.
Yes, to formalize it, I would make it a condition. Typically, if during construction, somebody has a gravel drive that is removed before the inspection process is over, then that wouldn't constitute a violation. I mean, we have construction drives all the time. But to formalize kind of the path forward, so everybody's on the same page, I do think it'd be good to be part of your motion.
I do have a question. So I know you're saying there's no commercialization of this and that's not the intent. But I guess my question is, will there be other, I mean, would you have friends with dogs that are doing the same thing? Are you going to have other groups of people bringing animals and training at the same time? Or is this truly solely for your own pets?
This would be training for, training space for my pets. It would not be for me to be giving lessons to other people, or anything like that.
I don't believe I have any other questions. Okay, are is all the affidavits and notices and receipts and everything in order?
Yes. Yes, they are.
And yes, the certified copy of the Unified Development Ordinance and the comprehensive plan are also in the file.
I'll take a motion to accept them all into the record.
Chairman, I move that we admit all the evidence presented in regard to this matter, including the notices, receipts, maps, photographs, written documents, petitioner's application and attachments, petitioner's detailed statement of reasons, the staff report prepared by the planning department, certified copies of the Unified Development Ordinance and comprehensive plan, testimony of the petitioner, city planning staff, and any remonstrators, and all other exhibits presented, be they oral or written, for consideration by this board in regard to this petition, and to include the testimony of those present this evening.
Motion by Ms. Peters, second by Mr. King. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. I will take a motion on request number 1, which is the requirement to waive the 36-inch tall mortared masonry wainscot.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the request for the wainscot, the 36-inch tall mortar masonry wainscot to be replaced with the metal siding, with the 3 conditions listed by staff. The 4th condition we talked about doesn't have anything.
Does not apply to that, correct? Okay.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Polar, second by Mrs. Peters. All those in favor, raise your right hands. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-1.
Nay.
Mr. Foster. Okay, motion for number 2, which is to increase the maximum size of accessory building from 2,857 square feet allowed to the 4,800 square feet being requested.
Talking about those other conditions, can I ask a question before we make a motion? If we're narrowing the building to allow her to accommodate the 20-foot high structure, what's that change the square footage to?
Well, the 50 by 70 was 3,500, but I don't know what
And they didn't change the dimensions of the building, she just changed the height.
on the height restriction, but
I mean, they were talking about moving the walls in 2
Right,
feet on
in
either
order to
side
accommodate it.
in order to change the pitch
Well,
to
they-
312.
So there's a 14-foot clear span in it. They talked about reducing that to 12,
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
height.
Reduce that by 2.
which would get them
Thank
under
you for
the
the
12.
clarification. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the request for to increase the square footage size of the building to 4,800 square feet versus our unified ordinance with the 3 conditions.
and
Again, fourth,
the fourth does not apply. Okay. All right, I have a motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Fuller, second by Ms. Peters to approve with the 3 conditions. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion is denied 3-2. Request number 3, relief from the requirement that all driveways and parking areas shall be paved with concrete, asphalt, and pavers. Request for the driveway area behind the house to be crushed stone.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the motion. Let me rephrase that. We're talking about taking it out.
Yeah,
With
you'll need to
condition
add
number
the
4.
You'll want to add the 4th condition.
Right.
So
So
we're not really approving
we're
it.
not approving
Oh,
the gravel driveway.
So how do you do this? Because the request is to have the gravel driveway, but we're not approving the gravel driveway.
Move to install a paved walker pathway.
You just deny the variance for a gravel drive and tell them, if they want
So
something.
And then
This is something they have to come
All
back.
right. Mr. Chairman, I move that we deny the request for the gravel driveway with the staff's conditions. In addition, condition number 4, to provide a sidewalk or a pathway back to the structure.
you don't need any
You don't need
conditions.
that.
You deny it.
You're
Deny,
denying.
you can't put conditions on, it's just a
denying.
denial.
Yeah,
Okay.
deny.
A motion to deny,
Second.
second by Mr. King. All those in favor of the denial, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That carries 5-0. Okay, so, well, I'll take a motion to direct the Corporation Council to draft written findings of fact.
Mr. Chairman, having considered the statutory criteria, move that we direct the Corporations Council Office to draft written findings of fact regarding our decision on the variance request presented in variance petition number BZA 2021-027. Said findings to specifically incorporate the staff's report and the evidence submitted in the record for consideration and adoption by the Board of Zoning Appeals as our final decision of final action regarding this petition at our next meeting.
Motion by Mr. Pollard,
Second.
second by Mr. King. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0.
Right again.
It was 5-0 in favor of drafting.
Okay.
So, Mr. Rader, Mr. and Mrs. Rader, so, you do have approval on number 1. However, obviously, number 2 and number 3 have been denied at this time. I would suggest you continue to work with the planning department to adjust some things and let us hear you again.
seems just a little bit too large of a request on the building, and then I think we have maybe a path to success on number 3 if you work with the staff.
All right, well, thank you for the hearing.
Thank you.
All right, any new business from the floor? Seeing none, any announcements?
We have one petition filed that will be on a docket in January.
Yeah, we do not have our second meeting this month. We're taking Christmas week off. So,
Merry Christmas, everybody.
yes.
And we are back in the second Tuesday of January, correct?
Okay.
Second Monday.
Sunday.
Second, what did I say, Tuesday?
January 10th.
January 10th.
I'm already a day ahead. January 10th, a Monday at 6 p.m.
And it's not legal.
And it's not legal.
Whatever you would call
All right, any other announcements? Seeing none, a motion for adjournment.
it. So moved.
BZA is adjourned.